One of the most common debates between gamers is whether gameplay or story is more important to a game. Most games are a combination of both, but the salience of one seems to be directly linked to the other, i.e., games that focus a lot on gameplay focus less on story, and vice versa. Today, I'm going to argue both sides. I think there's a fundamental point to be made. As playing games is literally about playing the game, how the game plays and how enjoyable it is to play are obviously critically important. That, at least at face value, seems to be the actual point. I think people predominantly play games for three main reasons: for enjoyment, for a challenge, and for escapism. While a good story might play a role in those three, gameplay is what really defines them. When we talk about how enjoyable it is to play a game, we're usually talking about gameplay. When we talk about how challenging a game is, we're also usually talking about gameplay. As I mentioned in my Hotline Miami review, tight and concise gameplay-centric experiences are what truly hold your focus, allow you to achieve your flow, and suck you into the game's world. By tightening its grip on your mind and never relenting, fast-paced gameplay is the only way you'll truly be immersed in the game, and the only way that the game will offer genuine escapism. While a good story can also draw you in, it still gives plenty of room for the mind to wander, meaning that you're never completely escaping reality. An absence of story has historically made very little difference to a game with great gameplay. Some of the most widely acclaimed games have little to none. A game like Resogun is still an outstanding game, even though it has little to no story. I'm not sure the same can always be said when the roles are reversed. For a start, a game physically can't have no gameplay. If it has no gameplay, it simply ceases to be a video game. A game with very minimal gameplay must have an amazing standard of writing or storytelling if it's going to be great. Even then, games with limited gameplay and great stories can be a slog and can be very daunting and inaccessible to many gamers. Point and click adventures are direct proof of that. We've recently seen the re-emergence of 8-bit games, returning to a time when 90% of the focus was on gameplay over story. Back then, story was, for the most part, what your imagination extrapolated it to be. Although nostalgia has obviously played a significant role in this reversion, I think many gamers are becoming more and more exhausted by the redundancies and unnecessary complexities in modern games, and are yearning for simplicity. I'm not sure we've produced better or more engrossing gaming experiences than those provided by the 8 and 16-bit eras, which is probably the strongest argument for the importance of gameplay. The eras that focus predominantly on gameplay still, to this day, contain the greatest games ever made. But gameplay does have its limits. Since the time of the SNES, games have become remarkably more complex. The growing use of story has radically changed the gaming industry. In the last few generations, games have become genuinely emotionally engaging. There's plenty of modern games that will make a lot of people cry, a feat unimaginable in the 1980s. I can't really envision someone breaking down in tears when Mega Man beats Dr. Wily for the 17th time, unless they were shit at the game or something and started crying because they overcame their oppressive shitness. Storytelling in games is certainly flawed, but it's also in its infancy. Look at how raw movies were in their first 20 or 30 years of production. It takes time to perfect the art. Story in games represents something vital. It represents a risk. It represents innovation. It represents the future of gaming. There will always be creative developers who will come up with subtly different styles of gameplay, but that aspect of gaming is still relatively finite. Storytelling isn't. The stories that people can tell are truly infinite. You can have two games that are mechanically identical, but they'll be individually fantastic experiences if they have two unique tales to tell. A good example of this is the Batman Arkham series and the Middle-earth Shadow of series. They both use the same underlying combat system, both contain exploration, but are completely different because of their stories, and because these unique stories and lore caused the respective worlds to be populated by completely different creatures. When storytelling became prevalent in games, it was like a layer of depth was added on top of the core gameplay. for the moment, that still had a mixed effect. It elevates some games to levels that couldn't have been possible without it, but it also leaves a wealth of games feeling bloated, overlong, and boring. I feel like one of the biggest problems is that story-focused games have become more and more popular in an age where instant gratification is becoming increasingly widespread. In that way, the pressure is really ramped up on developers who are trying to tell a story. People are less patient and more demanding than ever, so anything that isn't hitting the mark instantly is going to be ripped to shreds. This may also partially explain why games without story are still so popular. Regardless, storytelling is still imperative moving forward in the gaming industry. Writing in games is a bit shit compared to TV and movies.
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right. Barry, thanks for saving my life.
But it's getting better all the time. I often like to think of gameplay and story as adjustable sliders. To make a great game, developers usually slide one up and slide one down, making one more important or more of a focus than the other. Having amazing gameplay and a minimal story makes a great game. Having an amazing story and minimal gameplay does the same. If you have two sliders in the middle and both are just alright, then the game will be alright.
Alright.
Then a game like The Witcher 3 comes along, says, fuck that shit, and puts both sliders all the way up, creating a game that has both an incredible story and amazing gameplay. That's the main reason, in my opinion, why story is more important than gameplay. While gameplay is finite, story will also allow video games to reach heights they've never reached before, creating thoroughly enjoyable yet emotionally engrossing experiences, something which gameplay alone could never hope to achieve. In short, gameplay has historically been more important, but story is more important for the future of gaming. Which games do you think have the best storytelling? Which have the worst? Let me know in the comments below. I can't wait to hear your opinions. If you thought the video was enjoyable or thought-provoking or whatever, remember to like and subscribe. Thank you as always for watching, and go play some games.